Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to finish profiling the stem. In Temptress build 43, I use this template to cut the rough shape of the stem to shape. Now what I've done is I've tacked this same template back on here, and I have a second template, this time with a groove down the center that Dan Lee has provided. And what I'm going to do with this is twofold. I'm going to put this on the other side of the stem so I can use my belt sander to finish profiling this exactly to the lines. And this groove here, I'm going to go through that groove and mark out a line on the stem, which will define the profile where I go from the center point to the angle. So that's what we'll be doing in this video. Now, let's look at the step-by-step process. I temporarily attach the template to the stem. So as you can see, I did not do a great job. The majority of the line is just above this, so I can sand that down with a belt sander. But a few of these are right at the line or just a little bit off. It'll be okay, but I just like to point out, you know, not everything is perfect, and that's what I have thickened epoxy for. So I'm gonna belt sand this down, and then I'm gonna mark that groove. So this new jig here that Dan Lee has provided the design for has a dual use. You can use it to shape the front of the stem, and if you look at this groove right here, this is to tell you where the beveling starts. So I had my friend Chrislyn mill this out for me on the Shaper Origin, and instead of going all the way through on this groove, I asked her just to engrave it to a certain depth. I did that because I wanted to use it just like you saw me use it, to really have two sides of this, have it be nice and sturdy, and basically get the front edge shape here. Now what I'm gonna do with the Dremel here is I'm gonna go ahead and cut right through along that groove so that I can then mark the where the bevel starts on the stem. Here, I borrow an idea from Serdar Bas. By painting the stem white, it's much easier to see the profile line. And this means that I'm much less likely to cut over the profile line. Looking where this stem bevel needs to start to get to the center point, you can see how much I have to angle frame one to get it to a line here. So I got a lot of work on both the stem and these frames before I put in the chine top rails. Next, I mark the center of the stem. So here's a little something I want to point out. I have put a center line here with a pencil right at the center of the stem that has now been profiled. And I have a laser line coming from the center all the way to the back of the boat. But down here, you can start to see that the laser line is not lining up to the pencil. And I do need to have this stem centered, so I'm a little off kilt. So what I'm gonna do is clamp this in a way that brings that to the center. And that will make sure that the stem is centered on that line. And then when I cut it, it will be dead center of the boat, and I'm gonna use all the chine top rail and the side battens and the chines itself to hold this in place so that this is centered. So it's important to put this right in the center. This is just a demo. I really need to do this before I bond the chine top rail. So now what we have to do is shape the stem to line up this center line with the edge. And I think what I'm gonna do as I look at this is do just like I did with the rest of the keel, and I put these, sawed these slots. I think I can do lines and just cut from the center line to that line throughout this and then shape it down to that angle. So let me give that a shot. I must admit that I really struggled with the saw. To the point that I broke it. So I replaced the blade, and now I'm going to continue making these cuts. but with a new blade, I did manage to complete all the cuts. Now it was time to shape the stem. I started with a saw, and I'm just taking that out so when I use either the belt sander or the power plane, I just have a little bit of extra space here. Okay, now that that's cut out, I'm going to come in with the power plane and start removing some big material, but I'm not going to go too close to the line. I've learned my lesson. After the power planer, I did the majority of the sanding with my large belt sander. Unfortunately, I forgot to videotape it. So here, I show the cleanup with my mini belt sander. With the bottom of the stem roughly shaped, I used a saw to trim off the edges and work on the top of the stem. Finally, I finished cleaning up the stem with the large belt sander. At this point, I will stop shaping the stem, knowing that I'll have to do some further refinement after attaching the top chine rail and the side battens. And yes, I wish I would have made a few of these cuts a bit more shallow. Till next time, cheers.